What is up, guys? Chris from the Review Cave here, and today are you as excited as I am because the official sequel to Seven Deadly Sins, The Four Nights of Apocalypse, has officially released its first chapter, and I cannot contain my excitement because I finally get to see this new sequel series only like half a year after the original has finally finished. And the anime is about to reach its final season right now, so it is a good time to be a Seven Deadly Sins fan. But with all that out of the way, let's get started with this 70-page, according to the count, first chapter for this brand new series. So, Four Nights of Apocalypse gives us this new colored page, and it shows a kid running to catch a bird and trying to get his grandfather to help and catch it. The grandfather throws a pitchfork right at this bird, manages to hit it right in midair as it falls down. And this new character runs into the air, grabs this bird, seemingly twists it in mid-air, and then grabs onto the ledge as we learn that this kid's name is Percival. Now, if you don't know, Percival has actually a name of one of Arthur's Knights of the Round Table in the fictional stories about King Arthur. And I honestly thought that this story was going to focus around the children of the Seven Deadly Sins due to some of the artwork that we did get at the end of the original season, based on the artwork that we got from the original series. But no, it's following an entirely different character, which I'm honestly pretty okay with, because as much as I would have loved to see Tristan or Lancelot as the main characters of the sequel series, I have no doubt they're going to show up again, especially with how Suzuki managed to create his series and that special Lancelot one-shot that he released a couple of months back. But anyway, seeing that we have a new main character, he is very small and it does kind of look like Meliodas, even though it's not Tristan. But either way, as we continue on, they go back to their house, and Percival manages to slice and dice up this bird, and then him and his grandfather roast and eat it. And as they enjoy this meal, we do get to see one little panel of a mark right underneath the bird that begins to disappear, which is kind of signals that something might actually happen later down in the chapter. But for now, Percival and his grandfather get ready to do some special Celtic wrestling called Gorin. And as they begin to fight, Percival goes in with immense agility, which kind of resembles Meliodas. Again, I am very happy because I love Meliodas. But anyway, Percival goes in, tackles his grandfather, tries to push him down into the ground, and right when he thinks he's actually going to win, his grandfather picks him up and then slams him to the ground. And as he's complaining that he lost again, his grandfather says that he actually had a try, which got Percival very excited that he actually managed to get his grandfather to try, which we're not entirely sure if he was just kidding or if he was just trying to be nice to help build up Percival's spirit. As his grandfather actually begins to reminisce about him being a child and how he's growing up very quickly, a sudden realization comes to him, and I originally thought that he thought of that something very bad was about to happen related to that mark from earlier. But no, it turns out he and Percival forgot that it was Percival's birthday. Hell, even Percival forgets how old he's going to be. Turns out he's 16 and that he's practically an adult already, which Percival ends up doing a bit of a joke, saying that he is now old enough to drink with his grandfather, but his grandfather plays it off and says that it's too early for him. But his grandfather then brings Percival to the edges of this cliff, and we see this big 2-page spread showing a vastness of clouds, and he ends up saying that this area that they're currently living on is called the God's Finger. And Percival literally is about to say what he was about to say and be like, "You think I want to fly off God's Finger and go on a journey around the world?" He's like, "Nah, nothing special," which surprises his grandfather because at his age and how his father was, they all wanted to basically go off on an adventure. And then he starts coming up with a bunch of ideas, saying that one area is the island where the creations of the goddesses called the Sky People live, and even Percival calls him out on this, saying that he doesn't even know that. But then he goes on to mention Britannia below, and even comes up with a bunch of different stories, like twisting towers where eccentric magicians dwell, knights who sail ships of illusions through the heavens, caves with countless openings that lead to hell, evil lake princesses that tempt heroes and imprison them, labyrinth forests that you can never escape should you lose your way, which I'm gonna like this little bit of a lot of this stuff that's going on, because the twisting towers with the eccentric magicians dwell is an obvious nod to Merlin, knights who who sails ships of illusions through the sky, also alludes to possibly Gother and how he has his memory magic. We have caves that lead to hell, which, well, there's a lot of speculation, but it could end up talking about Meliodas, Evil Lake Princess, obviously Lady Lake, and the Labyrinth Forests. It's basically a way to allude to the Fairy King's Forest. But the funny thing is, as his grandfather was telling these stories, Percival just went off, grabbed a fishing rod, and asked him asked his grandfather if he would come and skyfish with him. And then we go on to the night where they're eating a skyfish, and then the conversation goes back to that, and then the conversation gets turned to how Percival's father actually left the house on an adventure when he was 16, but then Percival says that, didn't he die? Coughing up nervously, he's like, it's nothing. But then his grandfather asks Percival if he feels rather lonely just being here on this mountain with... Then his grandfather asks Percival if he's actually lonely, being stuck on this island with him all the time. But Percival answers in the most wholesome way possible, saying that he's fine as long as he's with his grandfather. While liking what he says, his grandfather actually brushes it off and says that Percival is boring. But as Percival is getting some more bows and arrows fixed up, they try to make plans so that they could possibly go hunting again tomorrow. But then his grandfather repeats something that he says before he drinks. Those eyes see through evil, that mouth speaks the truth, that heart is filled with justice, that sword smashes evil. And apparently he says this every time he's drunk. And his grandfather says that it's just a reminder. But his grandfather also told Percival that he's still a kid, but sometimes he'll have to defeat evil to help the weak. And then Percival finishes what his grandfather was saying earlier, and you must become someone who protects and risks their lives for things they hold dear. And then Percival smiles, saying that he'll protect his grandpa. And as the night goes on, Percival wakes up in the middle of the night, heads to the edge, and ends up repeating what his grandfather had told him, which shows that he actually was listening. And what's very great is that he gets super excited after remembering everything that was said, jumping around, doing acrobatics, running around in circles around that whole island, surprisingly not waking up his grandfather, and then he flops down onto the ground and says that as much as he wants to go on an adventure and he can't stay still, he's basically content with staying with his grandfather due to how much he loves him. But then we get an interesting page that shows his grandfather out in the distance, waving towards him, trying to say something. And as he tries to get closer, Percival wakes up, and then he ends up singing A Night in the Clouds. And this is honestly a really nice design for a holy night from what I can tell. I'm honestly really happy that we got some more interaction because we're already halfway through the chapter and nothing too action-packed happened. But as we see, apparently this magic night, this holy night, is actually looking for someone. And what's interesting is that he said he shot down by messenger, and judging by how it turned out, it's definitely him, which means he was looking for somebody. And then that bird that they shot down at the very start of the chapter is actually related to this holy night. As he starts to think that this guy is in the middle of nowhere and that he's searching incredibly hard for him, Percival goes up and says, "Oh, are you the knight who sails a ship of illusions through the heavens?" And if the stories were true, and the knight basically goes off and greets Percival and asks where Bulgus is, which is actually his grandfather's real name. And the knight tells Percival that they are basically old friends and that they were once holy knights. The knight then says that 16 years ago that they basically broke off ties and now he has urgent business that must be resolved. So Percival, being the naive little kid he is, points towards their house, saying that his grandfather is fixing breakfast. But Percival isn't really concerned about that because he's super excited about this boat that seems to be flying in the sky. And then the knight says, "Go ahead and go on it." But then he says something rather ominous and foreboding. It's basically saying, "What a cruel man. He raised you while hiding the truth." Percival gets a big shiver up his spine, but he basically brushes it off as the knight goes away and he starts to play with the boat. But the boat isn't moving, and it basically comes to a realization that it might be because he himself is not a holy knight. But after remembering what the knight told him, Percival basically gets a very bad feeling and starts to run towards his house. Cut back to the house, and we see the grandfather basically cutting up everything for breakfast, as the voice says in the distance that he's using the sword that was given to him by his majesty is being used as a kitchen knife, and that it's the same old him. Bulgus grabs his sword to try and attack and block, but he's lunged right through his house with what seems to be like a cross-type magic attack, which is shown in the dust that it was all from the fingers. It was an attack launched by the fingertips of this Holy Knight. The Holy Knight begins to say that he has been searching for Bulgus for years, ever since they betrayed their master and fled 16 years ago. Again, 16 years ago is honestly a very important number because Percival is 16 and his father basically died apparently 16 years ago, which is honestly a very interesting way of making a connection between this Holy Knight, Percival's grandfather, Percival, and Percival's father. But no time is left because Bulgus lunges forward to try and attack him. And then he corrects him, saying that it was your side who turned against him. I only abandoned him. And as the fight continues, we see some awesome swordplay as expected from Nakaba Suzuki. But then the knight does the exact same attack he did that Bulgus blocked earlier, only this time it broke right through his body and the stone behind him, leaving a fatal wound on Bulgus as Percival notices from atop the ledge of the cliff. After discovering this, Percival is asking why he's doing this and to stop, but the Holy Knight does the same attack on the mountain to show how strong he is, in a way to try and scare the kid, saying that you're up next. But Percival grabs a piece of the rubble, lunges off the hill. Percival grabs a piece of the rubble, lunges off the hill, and throws it straight at the Holy Knight, telling him to get away from his grandfather. But without any hesitation and with little to no effort, he breaks the rock, and then as Percival is using his acrobatics to try and land a very strong hit with a large boulder, the exact same thing happens. And while saying that that Percival himself has no discipline, Bulgus grabs the Holy Knight from behind, telling Percival to run. And even though Percival won't leave him, the Holy Knight said he won't let either of them escape, as he unleashes a barrage of the exact same magic attack on Bulgus, leaving multiple wounds that are rather fatal, shocking and scarring young Percival. Bulgus falls to the ground as the Holy Knight says that if there's anyone you should blame, it would be his grandfather, as he picks up his finger, points at Percival, and lands another blow on his chest as Percival falls to the ground, and we see the exact same aftermath shot from the cliff below. Right before Percival is about to fall to the ground, he musters all of his strength to lunge forward and try and land one more hit on the Holy Knight. But it obviously does nothing, and the Holy Knight kicks him away into the rubble. As it seems the snow is falling, we get the reveal of the name of this Holy Knight, Ironside. Bulgus asks him why he's come to kill him right now after all these years. He then says that some days ago an ominous prophecy was made, the arrival of an existence that will lead our Lord King Arthur to his doom. So this implies, or basically confirms, that Bulgus and Ironside, this new Holy Knight, served by the side of King Arthur from the Seven Deadly Sins, who is now ruling Camelot. And I honestly am really excited that we're finally getting confirmation of a character that everyone thought and prophesied and basically theorized was going to be one of the main focuses of the series. And I'm so happy that we're going to see Arthur again eventually, but for now, that's just going to be how it is. Ironside goes on to say what this new threat is called: the Four Knights of Apocalypse. And the truth is, he doesn't even know the details. If that's the case, until they reap any seeds of possibility, no matter how far they fall, they cannot say for sure that there is no change of those that there's no real change of basically Bulgus being one of those four knights. And Bulgus basically says, does he suspect Percival? And he says, it's all for, and Ironside just leaves, saying that it's all for the greater good. Any of this, so this confirms that the Four Knights of Apocalypse might not actually be the villains of the series, but actually the main protagonists, and Percival being one of them. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was kind of hoping that the Four Knights of Apocalypse would be just the villains of the show, and then we have the kids of the Seven Deadly Sins joining together to fight them. Now, this could still very well be the case. We just don't know yet. If Percival and possibly the other Sin's children all come together, then this could honestly be very interesting to see, because it's prophesied that they'll be the end of King Arthur. And if we remember from the end of the Seven Deadly Sins manga, Arthur has control over the powers of chaos, which can manipulate and warp reality, and he basically has the supreme power over everyone. He's the strongest character in existence right now, and if that power goes out of control, it could be a huge threat. So it's very possible that this prophecy is that the Four Knights of Apocalypse could actually stop a potentially out of control Arthur if he were to ever lose control of his powers. But that's just my thought process on how this could go. But back to the story. Bulgus is gasping for air and looking for Percival, and Percival is surprisingly up despite his wounds. He's crying, he's up on his 2 feet, saying that he couldn't protect him. And it's basically like he was not fatally wounded like his grandfather. Possibly that the knight just went easy on Percival, or thought that the minimum amount of power was needed to kill him. Which, seeing how Percival is seemingly walking around like it's nothing after a few seconds of recovering, there is something special about this kid. And I'm curious to see what revelations will be on Percival, whether he's a demon, whether he's the child of a goddess, whether he just blessed, or if he's like the chosen one or something like that. We just don't know. But I cannot wait to see how important Percival is to the story and how he begins to grow and change as a character. As they're both apologizing on whether or not to protect each other and that they're a precious family, Bulgus says that from now on, that Percival needs to find something to protect, to trust his heart and find someone important that can walk through life with him. Percival saying that this might actually be a punishment onto him because he lied. He really wanted to go on an adventure, but he just couldn't leave his grandfather. But his grandfather then says that he lied to him also. The truth is, he was glad when Percival said that he wouldn't be lonely as long as he had him. Percival goes to check on him as he falls to the ground. Percival being like, "You're still staying so calm after taking so much damage." And hell, he even says that it's not like it was easy. He was trained by his grandfather every day for 16 whole years. As Percival asks who this person in the red armor is, which confirms that Ironside does in fact have red armor, but asking what a holy knight is. Bulgus tells Percival that Ironside is actually Percival's father. Like I said earlier, coincides with the 16 years that has been said multiple times in this first chapter. Percival's 16 years old. It's been 16 years since Bulgus and Ironside cut ties, and it has been 16 years since Percival's father had seemingly died, or at least that's what Bulgus told him. So it's obvious something happened where they betrayed King Arthur in some way, shape, or form, and Bulgus had to take Percival away and hide somewhere, training him for the day where Percival would have to end up leaving and going off on his own, potentially to meet King Arthur in some way, shape, or form. I mean, obviously Bulgus had no idea about this prophecy about the Four Knights of Apocalypse, but it is something that might actually warrant how special and strong that Percival might actually be. But anyway, he's saying that Percival can't really accept everything that's going on, but Bulgus says that there's no time to explain, but gives Percival a goal, that if he wants to know everything, to go find Ironside, his father, and ask him directly, and to prepare for a long journey, because he will most likely be alone. But despite Percival crying, saying that he doesn't want to be alone and that he doesn't want his grandfather to die, his grandfather pats his head and says that even if he dies, to have hope, to be my hope, as he passes away in front of Percival. Seemingly the next day, Percival buries his grandfather, looking at the clothes and helmet that was left for him, saying that he's going on a journey. And with one of the last words spoken by his grandfather, that I've always been and always will be with you forever. As he clenches the helmet, puts it on, and gets ready to go on a journey so he can find his father, his grandfather's killer, and uncover the truth. And I love this narration saying that he was feeling anxiety, fear, and longing. He stepped forward into a journey of great destiny as he just topples over his own coat as the chapter ends. Now, this is an obvious setup chapter from any other series, which I honestly enjoyed. And we can all tell that this character resembles Meliodas in some way, shape, or form. And even though I do think that Percival somewhat got the idea of his grandfather's death on his shoulders, he is still marching forward because that is what his grandfather wants. What happens in this one chapter sets up the entirety of the story, making it so that Percival is supposedly one of these Four Knights of Apocalypse. His grandfather and his father possibly did something horrible to betray King Arthur, And this could end up being the journey that sets up his meeting with the Sins and their children. And for all we know, this could actually be a red herring, meaning that despite the Sins still existing in this world, from what I can understand, since King Arthur's around, it's very possible that Percival is either one of the Four Knights of Apocalypse, or the Four Knights of Apocalypse are in fact other beings that they will have to fight and be the main antagonists of the entire series. There's still a lot of unknowns, but for a first chapter, I honestly cannot wait to see what happens next. And this was just a really amazing first chapter for a brand new series. And I feel like Nakaba could actually really spread his wings, despite all of the things he set up and did in the previous series of the Seven Deadly Sins. There's so much for him to tell, and more ways to expand the world of the Sins. But that's just my thoughts. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit lengthy for a review, but this was a very, very long chapter, and I wanted to get every single detail into this one video. If you enjoyed this video, I will do everything I can to get this one series a weekly review schedule. Every Thursday or Friday, I will have a review of the next chapter of Four Knights of Apocalypse up and running almost weekly. Now, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will do everything I can to keep up with that schedule that I just told you about. But if you guys support me by liking this video and subscribing to the channel, I will manage to keep up all these reviews and maybe even do some special Four Knights of Apocalypse content specifically for the series, whether it be theories or speculations. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at the Official Review Cave for updates on future videos. And don't forget to comment down below on what you think this series could end up being. What could potentially happen, how Percival will meet the Sins, or whether or not he is actually supposed to be one of these Four Knights of Apocalypse, or if they're just alluded to be the main antagonists of the series, and what exactly Percival's father and grandfather did to betray and abandon King Arthur.